Thank you for coming back. And you knew I was on the agenda, so that means a lot to me that you came back for more suffering. This is going to be a completely different conversation now. Our first conversation had to deal with safety and risk mitigation. How do we reduce the frequency of losses in your fleet? Because those are very expensive when you take the kinds of essentially risk that you're taking in this captive. And there's also the moral imperative to try and reduce accidents and injuries because it's the right thing to do. However, in the absence of having any drivers, you won't have any accidents, and there's not a person in this room that isn't struggling to find drivers. As I was saying before we got going with John, I said, there's not a company out there that's not having trouble finding pizza makers, grade school teachers, carpenters. Our unemployment rate in this country right now is about 4.95%. That means if you want a job, you got a job, basically. I mean, that's as good as we ever get, is about 5% unemployment. Trucking and finding truck drivers has always been a problem. In 1988, while at Progressive Insurance, and you probably remember this, we wrote a 140-page white paper called The Driver Shortage in America. About 2 years ago, I stumbled upon that in an old box of stuff, and I opened it up and I read the abstract on the front page, and I think I'd need to change about 3 words. And it would apply today. It ain't no better and it ain't no worse, it's just the same. It is a problem. And so I want to talk a little bit about the driver problem, no more than a dozen slides to frame up the problem. And we don't call it a shortage, and I'll give you a reason why in a moment. And then a little bit about some very, very high-level strategies that you can use to address this problem. Tomorrow we'll talk in much greater detail. It was originally called driver retention, but I altered the talk to be how to create a driver-centric culture, because I believe that they're one and the same if we want to hang on to our drivers. But at a high level, I'm going to talk to you today about 5 processes that you normally wouldn't think of when you think of the driver problem. You're going to think, well, how do these two connect? How are these connected? That's like that crazy thing with behavior theory and accidents happening, right? No, there's a connection, and hopefully I'll be able to make that connection for you. All right, so the driver problem and 5 specific strategies you can use to mitigate that problem. The age-old driver shortage is getting worse. Is it? It's been going on since we were pulling wooden carts with donkeys in the Egyptian days. There's a shortage of qualified, competent, capable, engaged professional drivers out there. At present, we are losing some 6,000 people a month, my age. Not to death necessarily, but to retirement and leaving the industry, although a fair number are dying. The average death rate for an over-the-road truck driver is 63.5 years old, which is disturbing because our average over-the-road truck driver is 45.5 years old, which only gives us about a dozen years worth of productive life on averages, if you go with those. So there is a driver shortage. It is going to get worse. I don't know if the prognostications by the ATA of 20,000 and 30,000 and 40,000 is quite accurate, but I do believe that through demographics and through additional regulation, we are challenged to bring people into this industry and to cause them to be interested in the job. The young today would much rather play with a cell phone or write computer programs and play video games or even work in an office than maybe be physical in nature. As a culture, this entire country has somehow come under the belief since the mid-1950s that everybody had to go to college. You don't have that in Europe. You don't have that in Australia. A lot of folks grow up knowing that they're going to go to a trade school. They're going to be a plumber. They're going to be a carpenter. They're going to be a mechanic. And that's a noble profession that pays well, and it's a nice middle-class job, and they can live a wonderful life. There's no embarrassment from that. But in America, because we are all overachievers and type A's, everybody suddenly had to go to college. And so a lot of kids today go to college in the pursuit of some better job, and then what do? They come back and live with their parents for a couple years, and they work at Shakey's Pizza. All right, so it's true. I'm sorry, it's just true. It's a cultural phenomenon that we're seeing right now. So we don't have the number of young folks coming into the industry, and the government set up an incredibly, it was well intended, but it was an incredibly powerful tool to keep us from recruiting people into the industry, which is you have to be 21 years old before you can drive a truck interstate. And so what happens is if a kid did come out and wanted to drive a truck and he's 18.5 years old, He's got to wait 3 years, which means during a 3-year period of time, he's going to pick up probably some kind of a skill, whether it's a carpenter or a plumber or a tradesman or something else, and he would have to abandon those 2 or 3 years of his life to pursue a career as a driver. We are big, big supporters of 18-year-old truck drivers with proper training. Now, that may be heresy to you. You may think I'm wrong. The insurance underwriter might think I'm wrong. I believe a well-trained 18 or 19-year-old is as good as the pig in the poke 32-year-old that you just hired who's been around 9 years with Warner or Swift and picked up a lot of bad habits along the way. That's a personal opinion. I could be wrong. I think it would be a great opportunity, however, if the government dropped it to 18 years with the stipulation that there had to be very rigorous training involved. So the problem has been there for a long time. However, we believe the problem is principally churn. There's glasses here. I went to the grocery store the other day and there were a lot of cantaloupes. I went to the gas station and I went to fill up my car. There was gasoline in the tanks down below. All of those things got there on a truck. We say if you wore it, ate it, slept on it, lived in it, it came on a truck. There's no shortage of anything. Go to a store, go to a mall, go to anything that you would buy something and it's there, isn't it? Have you gone and seen like the empty Russian shelves, of yesteryear? It's like, oh my God, there's nothing here. There's no peanut butter for the kids. No, it's there. If there were a legitimate truck driver shortage, we would have legitimate shortages of products on shelves or materials available to us. There is a serious driver problem. Yes, we all want each other's drivers and we all want good drivers, but we're swapping drivers every 4 or 5 months all the time. And it's not an easy problem to solve. We went into it a couple of years ago, kind of part-time, but on the first of this year, we put a stake in the sand and said, AvatarFleet's going to solve the driver problem. We said to ourselves, this is a really big problem. It's going to be a really hard problem, but boy, if we can solve it, we'll be rich people. Well, guess what? 10.5 months into it, it's a really, really hard problem. And I don't care which way you tack it. I've got some clients who hired us to just do nothing but recruit. Put hot butts in cold seats. Find me more drivers. That's hard work. I'll tell you what's even harder. I got one client who lost 2,550 drivers last year. And they said, can you just make it a little bit better? Can you get it down to, say, a manageable 2,100? Can we save and hang on to 2,100 drivers, or 400 more drivers than last year? And our run rate right now, I'm down to 3 months to go, and we're going to land somewhere around 2,250. So we've improved them by 250, but not by the 400 that I bragged about on January the 1st to the president of the company. It is hard work, really hard work. And this is a company that does nothing but talk about driver retention every single day. The president does a video address to every single manager every single week. Every single month, everybody goes through a charm school class, and it's still hard lifting. This is a tough challenge, all right? So we'll talk about the problem, then we'll talk about a few things at a high level that you can start to do. There's constant churn, certainly. CSA is just one of many regulations that are problematic and cause people to throw up their hands and say, that's enough already. This is crazy. I got way too much going on. I get pulled over at the scale. It's just a bunch of harangue. I don't need it. Demographics, boomers are getting old. The young aren't interested. Meanwhile, you're turning down loads. Anybody have to turn down a load last week? Or not take a load? Right? Could have hauled more, right? I remember Bernie, what was Bernie's name, the owner of National Interstate. I was talking to him, National Freight in Vineland, New Jersey. And I was like 30 years ago, and I'm talking about selection and hiring the right people. He grabs me by my shirt, and he drags me over to the window of his office. He goes, young man, he was probably 80 at the time. He goes, you see that? And he's pointing to all these tractors in his yard. He goes, every morning I come in and count. This morning there were 46 tractors there. He goes, that's 46 loads I'm not hauling today. Now don't talk to me about selection. And that was in 1988. He goes, it churns my stomach to see all those empty tractors sitting there because I have to pay for them and I'm not making any money. You're turning down loads, man. This is a tough challenge. So a lot of drivers come and a lot of drivers go. We call it Teflon trucking. How many people here have lost more than one driver in the first 6 months that were with you this year? Right? How many of those, same people, same hands, how many of you have drivers who have been with you for more than 10 years? Same hands, right? So the same hands went up. You got drivers who have been with you 10 years and you got drivers who haven't lasted 6 months. What we have to figure out is why those guys were with you 10 years and find more like that and quit hiring the guys that are only there 6 months or less. That's the goal, okay? So going back to our discussion of human behavior, we do things for what? We do things to get rewards. Thank you, rewards, ABC. We do things to get rewards. Drivers join you to get a reward. Guaranteed, they're joining you to get a reward. They're working for him right now. They don't like the job. They find out about your job. They come over here because they think you've got something better and he's giving him. Okay? They want a reward. Why do they quit? We do things to get rewards or to avoid punishments, right? So, going back to understanding human behavior, and I showed you several clips of people sitting on photocopy machines or taking their moped over a ramp that isn't properly set up. I came across this picture and I thought, I got to use this picture somewhere. I don't know where I can use this picture. Why do people do the crazy things they do? What is the possible motivation? The thrill of sitting here drinking wine on a picnic table hanging off of a cliff? I don't get it, but I had to show it because people do strange things. Their motivations may be different than your motivations. And with drivers, their motivations may be different between Bob and Bill and Angelo, okay? So every one of us behaves in ways that get us those rewards. I mentioned the drink. That's easy. Everybody understands it. I'm sorry. I have to stop just for 1 second and say, subconsciously, you're sitting there right now, right before I started to talk, and you're going, with him, what's in it for me? Do I really want to pay attention to this guy? Does he have anything worthwhile to say at all? This is really boring. I don't want to have to listen to this guy. The truth is, this is what's happening in our schools. A 12, 13, or 14-year-old sits in geometry class in the inner city of Detroit, and they're trying to figure out, what's in it for me? Why do I care about the Pythagorean theorem? Why do I care about the quadratic equation? How in the world is this going to help me in my personal life and in my daily routine? How is this going to help me meet Debbie over here? It's not. And so they shut down because the WIFM is not there. There's no response to what's in it for me. Every single day when you start a training class, every single day when you meet with someone, your wife, your husband, the first unasked question subconsciously is always WIFM. What's in it for me? We are a selfish species. We want to take care of numero uno first. And our subconscious is winning that game all the time. What's in it for me? If there's not anything in it for me, I'm not going to do it. Even Mother Teresa, you say, oh, Mother Teresa was such a wonderful, giving person, and she gave to the poor and she helped people. Sure she did, because she got a charge out of it. There was still something in it for her that she did that because that was her personality to give. We all and every one of us want to take care of numero uno first, so when your drivers come to you, their brain says, what's in it for me? So how does it apply to them? They ask themselves, when they're applying to you, what's in it for you, for them? They ask that question on day one, why should I stay? They ask that on month one, why should I stay? They'd ask that on year one, why should I stay? You might not overtly think you're doing it in your marriage, but you do. It's back there, it's in the back, going on all the time like an endless loop at 33 1/3 if you're my age, because that's how fast the records used to go. I mean, you don't know what a record is, do you? Okay. All right, so subconsciously this question is going on in their mind. Drivers join you to get a quality of work life. First and foremost, this is going to be a quality job. Whether quality is the same for each driver, of course not. It's always different. But a decent vehicle, a decent route, a decent treatment, decent pay, attention, respect, a voice at the table. You notice next to good pay I wrote down competency. I have been working on this for some time now, and I may be wrong, it's just an opinion, but I think all too often when I do exit interviews of drivers who say they didn't respect me, they didn't appreciate me, it's the result of mistakes. Honest mistakes made maybe sometimes by a dispatcher, maybe sometimes by a shipper, maybe even sometimes by the salesperson who didn't buy or sell freight in particular lanes that aligned with the driver. But mistakes are made that are of a competency nature that dribble down to impact the driver and the way the driver gets paid. How many people here pay their drivers by the mile or by the load? What happens if there's bad weather? There's a good chance they're going to take it on the chin. What happens if there's a traffic jam? What happens if there's a breakdown? What happens if there's a mechanical defect? What happens if the shipper sends them to the wrong location or gives you a bad address? Oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes that trickles down to the driver. I was meeting with a very big company and I said, you need to have some kind of basic guarantee. And the guy says, we had a guarantee one time, productivity went down 15%. I said, I'm not talking about just a salary, I'm talking about a minimum threshold that you're going to guarantee them. I said, everybody in this room, there are a bunch of guys with ties, suits on, everybody in this room makes a very good living. Some of you make a few $100,000 a year. You get the same paycheck every 2 weeks, every Thursday. Bingo, here it is, comes automatically deposited into your check. I said, none of you worries about the price of gas, none of you worries about the price of groceries, none of you worries about whether or not you're going to be able to pay for your kids' clothes next week. A driver is like treading water. Their nose is 1 inch over the water line like this. And on Tuesday afternoon, they missed a load. For no fault of their own, they missed a load. Next Friday, they can't pay the Ford F-150 payment because they're living check to check. They don't have $50,000 in the bank, they're living check to check. It's just the job, that's what it is, that's their pay. They're not savers, they're not financial planners, they haven't thought ahead, and their wife goes, what the hell, we can't make the payment. What's gonna go on? Well, we can't feed the kids this week because we can't make the payment. So something bad happens in the form of competency that hurts their pay. When they quit, they inevitably said they didn't respect me, they didn't appreciate me, they lied to me. And I would argue that 99% of the time, none of those is true. I would say rather an honest mistake was made and it was perceived by or interpreted by the driver as disrespect because they got nothing else to go by. Why would they do that to me otherwise? Okay, so they join you to get these things. They join you because you told them in your ad you were going to give them these things. Your recruiter said, oh yes, we're going to treat you with respect. Oh yes, we get our drivers home every weekend on time. Oh yes, our drivers average $54,000 a year here. Oh yes, we've got we've got one of the most modern fleets in North Carolina right now. We tell them all these things, and probably most of those things are true, by the way. And so they join. And on day one, the positives outweigh the negatives. I can guarantee this. I can bet everything I own that on day one, in the driver's mind, the positives outweigh the negatives, or what? Or he wouldn't join you. He would go somewhere else. The positives outweigh the negatives. He added it all up. He made a risk, value, benefit decision with that teeter-totter, and he says, yep, I'm going to get more good here than I got where I'm at. I'm changing jobs, and I'm going to work with Joe over here because I've got more to win. I've got more wins over here, right? So on day one, the positives outweigh the negatives. They're coming on for quality work life, good pay, attention, respect, and a voice at the table. But eventually we get to what we call day X. Day X could happen in a month. Could happen in 3 or 4 months. Rarely does it happen at 2 or 3 years, but it does. But at some point we get to day X and they said, screw it, I'm out of here. What happened between day one, when everything was rosy, and day X, when they say, it's gotten so bad I gotta leave? The negatives outweighed the positives. And it's never an event. It's almost never an event, I should say. I don't want to speak in superlatives here. It's usually death by 1,000 cuts. I got delayed over here, and then the following week I missed a load over here, and then about a week or 2 later, this guy kind of didn't even say good morning to me, and then they moved my route over here. It's death by 1,000 cuts. It's a bunch of little tiny things that aggregate up and create in their mind the perception that I'm not being respected, I'm not being appreciated, I'm not getting the love. At the risk of being politically incorrect, how many people here have ever gone through a divorce? Raise them proud. Yeah, of course we have. On day one, it seemed like a good idea. I'm going to love her forever. I'm going to be with her forever. But something happened between day one and day X, and it ended in divorce. It's no different with a driver. On day one, the positives outweigh the negatives, but death through 1,000 cuts causes them to leave. So they join you to get quality work life, good pay, attention and respect, and a voice at the table. I can guarantee you they leave for the same reason. They ain't getting it, and so they're like wanderlust. I'm going to go find it somewhere else. This other company's promised all those things. Maybe I should go over there, and maybe they'll actually give it to me. Maybe for once this trucking company will keep its promises and give me the same things that they said in their ad. And the truth is that trucking company is no better than you, and you're no better than they are, because we all are human and we all make mistakes. And so we promise the best, we hope for the best, we try our best, and honest, simple, basic mistakes we call competence lead to the perception that I'm not respected and appreciated. When we did 2,000, what was it, Scott? Over 2,500 exit interviews. Now this is across a wide range of drivers in a variety of types of occupations, from over the road to regional, to flatbeds, to tankers, to food haulers, to refrigerated haulers, to guys bringing produce off the West Coast in containers, and locals, okay? When we interviewed them, this is what they said. Out of 2,500, we got a lot of different answers certainly, but they can all be boiled down to, I didn't make enough money. I'm not satisfied with my home time. I don't like my supervisor, could be dispatcher, could be manager, could be shop manager. It's usually supervisor. I'm not happy with the way I'm dispatched. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. The job isn't what I expected. This is particularly profound in the first 6 months. There are no opportunities to improve my situation. Now that doesn't mean make more money. That does not mean get promoted into a managerial role. That means improve my situation. I got a crummy truck. I want a better truck. My air conditioning unit is not working right. I want it to work right. Right now I'm going to New York City all the time, and I don't want to go to New York City all the time. I wasn't able to improve my situation. The company doesn't communicate with me. And by the way, this isn't unique to drivers. We have surveyed some 200 or 300 companies on a wide range of industries, banking and insurance and hospitals and everything else. The number one thing that always bubbles to the very top of every employee satisfaction survey is they don't communicate. Nobody communicates. You could talk until you're blue in the face and your employees will still say you don't communicate. I think I over-communicate, and Scott will tell you, the first thing people would complain about at Avatar is, he never tells us what's going on. And I spend 2 hours a day trying to tell everybody what's going on. You can't communicate enough. And then finally, I'm not appreciated. Not appreciated is a catch-all for a wide range of sins. If we highlight these: money, home time, supervisor, dispatch, expectations, opportunities, communicate, and appreciated, you might say, oh, those are the reasons. These are the reasons why they left. But as you look at those, just for a moment, I would like you to consider that those are really symptoms. Money isn't the reason. Money is a symptom of a different problem. Whether it's, I don't have freight in the right lanes, I don't have enough volume in this route, or I screwed up and didn't dispatch them on time, or the shop didn't get his tractor turned and out in time, so he had to sit for 2 hours without pay. These are primarily symptoms rather than root causes. I'm going to show you 5 processes that come together to help you solve the driver problem, attract more, hire better, teach and train, and retain drivers at a very, very high level. Each of these is worthy of quite a bit of conversation, and each of these is a process that you have in place today. How many people here have a recruiter or recruit drivers? Of course you all do. How many people here hire and train, hire and select and credential? Of course you all do. Every one of you does every one of these things. So let's talk about how we might be able to get just a skosh better on each one. Recruiting is not hiring. Recruiting is not credentialing. Recruiting is not onboarding. But yet all too many companies, the recruiter does all those things. They call them up. They tell them all about the great job. They get the application. They do the interview live or on the phone, and then what? Then they type it into HireRight and they get the background checks, and they get the credentials, and then the person comes in, and then they read them the policy manual, and they say, here's your benefits package, right? It's the same person. And so we confuse recruiting with selection and hiring and credentialing. And often the recruiter is being, not forced, inspired, is being gauged by how many hot butts and cold seats they're bringing in for us. And so they want to bring in everybody they possibly can. So let's just for a moment bifurcate those two. Let's say recruiting is, how many people have seen Mad Men? Remember the TV show Mad Men? Recruiting is Don Draper saying, smoke Chesterfield cigarettes. My cigarettes are better than Camels or Lucky Strikes. You got to smoke these cigarettes. Recruiting is all about, come on down. I got a great job. You don't want to lie. You want to attract the right people, but you want to attract a lot of people. The better you do at attracting a lot of people to the front door, to getting hits to your website, or to getting people to come to a job fair, to have people walking with a crayon in their hand to fill out an application, the better you do at recruiting, the more you have to choose from. You can't begin, as aptly pointed out by National Freight and Bernie, you can't begin to become selective about hiring drivers if you don't have anybody to select from. If you got one driver, you're going to hire him because that's the only one I got. If I got 50 drivers, I might take the best 5. But if I only got one, I can only go with one. And so you have to grow your recruiting initiative first. When you grow your recruiting initiative, while you want a lot of people, or minions, you don't want all of the minions. Some of them aren't a good fit for you. If you have a flatbed operation, you don't want people who wear a nice, tidy Walmart uniform and their hat and look all prim and proper. You want people that are used to being dirty and grubby and outside with snow blowing sideways in the ears while they're throwing turnbuckles over the back of the steel coil. And Joe, you don't want people who want to stick it in the big hole and go to the coast. That's not the job you have available for them. You really want a long-distance pedal operator. And you want somebody that does some very different things at different times during the year between fuel oils and hot tar, whatever it is, right? It's just a different animal. And his driver isn't going to be happy in your role. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're attracting the drivers who are what I describe as a good fit. And if you go back to the can-do, will-do model, I said motivations are the activities and rewards to which we're attracted. You didn't want to be an underwriter. I don't want to be a shoe salesman. I would hate that job. But somebody got up this morning, they're a shoe salesman, they're probably pretty happy. Matter of fact, somebody got up this morning, they were a garbage truck driver. I work with 28,000 of them at Republic. And they're pretty happy. They're making $70,000 a year picking up garbage, and they're done by 2:30 in the afternoon. They like their jobs. They don't even get out of the truck. Forward, dump, back. Forward, dump, back. Great job, right? They love it. My point is, one man's trash, no pun intended, is another man's treasure. You want to find people who would like to do the things that you have for them to do. I got a buddy who hauls tires for Goodyear and Firestone in general. He found a little niche. He hauls tires, and just like your furniture business, you pick up a load of tires and you drop off 400 of them here, 300 of them here, and 500 of them here. Now fortunately the tire's round and it rolls off the back of the truck, but you still got to grab it and pick it up and roll it off the back of the truck. It's a physical job. Not everybody wants to do that. Somebody might want to just get in the big hole, head for the coast, right? Roll and rest all the way. You want to find people who are a good fit. How do you know who's a good fit? Who's a good fit for your operation? Do you have an operation? Trucks? You don't have trucks? What are you here? Who's got trucks?
Just curious about.
Just curious. You got trucks? What's a good fit? What's a good fit for you?
We have 2 divisions local on the road, so we've got get more drivers than I can shake a stick at. They want to be home every night.
Don't shake a stick at them. Let's talk about the over-road drivers. Who's a good fit for over the road? Describe that person. In fact, think of one of your guys who's been with you 10 years. What are they all about?
I would say that they work well on their own. They have a good support system at home.
Good support system, okay. Anybody else got drivers that wants to offer what makes a good fit for them? Yes.
Some of the best over-the-road drivers, he mentioned the support system. You know, having a trucker's wife at home. I mean, you know, the trucker who's gone 2 to 3 weeks at a time, you have to ask at some point, do you have a relationship? You know, so it takes a different kind of family, wife at home. Also, some of the good ones I think of don't have that relationship. You know, they're okay being single right now.
Yeah.
And they're willing to do about anything you want them to do, but that's going to be a season of life. It's not always going to be that way.
Sure. Sure.
So if you keep him on the road, he's not going to meet, you know, Mrs. Right.
You been to a truck stop lately? She's knocking on the door at night, but it's, costs you $20. All right. So we want to get the right fit, and a good fit doesn't quit. I would suggest to you that the person who knows and has never been asked what a good fit is that guy you just described. Your senior drivers who have been with you for 10 or more years have been there for a reason. Now, it could be as bizarre as they like red trucks. I don't know. But if we don't ask the question, we don't know. Scott is trained in a skill called voice of the customer. And voice of the customer is a marketing, selling, business development kind of discipline in which you ask people what they like, what their problems are, what keeps them up at night, and then whatever it is you say, you write down, and then you scurry back to your business and you make a product that does that for them. So if somebody says, I really would like to get my hands on a left-handed boomerang because no one else sells left-handed boomerangs, you write that down, you go back and you say, oh, man, if we could just make some left-handed boomerangs, we'd be in business here. Voice of the customer is asking the questions rather than telling the customer, as Apple's pretty good at that, like, you need an iPhone here, and they make a really good iPhone so people buy it. But there was somebody behind the scenes doing voice of the customer. What would you like? Oh, I'd like a camera. Oh, I'd like music. Oh, I'd like GPS. Oh, I'd like a heartbeat monitor. Oh, I'd like a Fitbit. I don't want these things because they'll make my life better. Voice of the customer is asking the question and really listening. This is where you need to begin. Ask your senior drivers why they stay. Be explicit. Sit down with them one-on-one. Spend an hour with them. Find out what they like about your equipment, about your pay, about the routes, about their treatment, about their boss, about the culture, about the benefits, and anything else associated with or related to what we would describe as job benefits. Find out what they like. Now, two things are going to happen. One, you're going to find a couple of surprises. There's going to be a couple of things you're going to uncover and go, holy cow, now I never thought they liked that. Yeah, that's a pretty good thing. Number two, you are going to be providing them the greatest compliment in the world because you've just asked their opinion. And they're going to feel very good that you're asking them why they've stayed with you. And here's another phenomenon that occurs. We believe what comes out of our own mouth. Even if it's a lie, we believe what we say. And so when a driver says, I like it because Bob's always good to me, I just had an opportunity to have him say something good about Bob being good to him. If he says, I'm here because I think their equipment is, and the maintenance here is better than anywhere else I've ever been, and he says that out loud, he's just reconfirmed to himself subconsciously that that's true, and he does believe that. It's why we have such political polarization now. The more times people say, I don't care what it is, the more they believe it. I don't want to get down a slippery slope. Meet your drivers. Spend an hour with them. You can conduct surveys if you need a simple 10 or 20 question survey. We have them available. Just send us a message. We'll send you a survey. Do interviews. The focus group, now let me explain what a focus group is. A focus group is not, I've got this blank piece of paper, guys, let's fill it out. A focus group is, I've got this candy that comes in this gold package. What do you think about it? Is it big enough? Is it shiny enough? Can we open it appropriately? A focus group is really good on beating up on something that's physical or that exists already. I can give you blueprints for an apartment and do a focus group and say, what do you think of this? And somebody says, well, the bathrooms aren't big enough, or the bedroom should be over here off the kitchen. But I can't sit down with a bunch of people, call it a focus group and say, let's come up with a kitchen, or let's come up with a design, or let's come up with an apartment. No, that's not going to work. And so the first thing you do is survey them and interview them and find out 10 or 15 things. And then you sit down with the group and say, hey guys, we believe that what we have heard from our senior people is that these are the three main reasons why people stay here. And then let them beat up on that and argue and debate and discuss. Because, again, one man's trash is another man's treasure, so you're going to get some differing opinions. But you want to synthesize those ideas down enough until you can finally create an ad, marketing piece, website, web presence, jobs board, television commercial, whatever it is, that speaks to the hearts of those people who are your senior people. But even now, it's not time to run the ad. You create the ad, the marketing materials, the media, and what do? You get back in front of your senior guys again. You say, hey guys, we've written this new ad to attract people who are like you. We want more people like you, not just because you've been here for 10 years. We want people like you because you're a great guy. You're a great driver. You're one of our best drivers. In fact, by golly, let me get you a cup of coffee and let me sit down and show you this ad, and you give me your opinion of this ad. If you saw this ad, would it attract you? And let the guy says, no, because the guy doesn't have a beard. Or no, because the guy is too young. Or no, because the guy is white. Or no, because the guy's got a t-shirt on. I wear a flannel shirt. Let them beat up on it and then tweak the ad until the senior drivers, one at a time and or in a group as a focus group, say, yep, that really is the truth. That really is compelling, and that's something that I would respond. This now helps you attract drivers who value the same things that your senior drivers value, who like the same kind of work that they like. all right? We call it your inside reality. Chances are really good that you guys have good companies. Your inside reality is really cool. You go to work and you're proud because you own the business or you run the business. Most of your senior people probably feel very proud of the business you have. No one comes to work and says, oh, this place sucks, I hate this place, because if they did, they'd leave pretty soon. So you have a good inside reality. What we need to do is make that inside reality match the outside perception of the world. And the only way we can do that is to find out why that inside reality is good in the minds of your senior drivers. So that when we put that ad out there, put that marketing piece out there, it resonates with the people most like them. You have to have something good to say. That's hard sometimes. We got trucks. That ain't cutting it. I'm sorry, it just isn't cutting it. You have to make sure that it's true, and you want your senior drivers to approve it. I want to say one last thing on recruiting. We do recruiting. Scott has recruiters who work for him. We are recruiting truck drivers right now. Is it easy?
It's hard as hell.
It's hard as hell, isn't it? Right? And we got kicked to the ground in July, didn't we?
Sure did.
Down to our knees. Right. Our task is to hire no less than 22 drivers a month. And we were rocking and rolling. We thought, yeah, this is easy stuff. And July came along and we had 7 or 8 drivers. And the company that hired us to recruit drivers says, what the hell happened? And we're like doing the fast show. I was like, yeah, well, we didn't get it. It's hard. It's really, really hard. Now we're recovering in September, but I'm telling you, recruiting is hard. One of the things we did, I convinced this owner that he had to have a value proposition that was radically different than the competition. And we went back and forth for a period of 4 months, and finally he says, fine, I'm going to try it for a year and see what happens. We provide a guaranteed $1,200 a week salary. Now, what did I just do to him? I created an enormous problem for his dispatchers who have got to make sure that they get productivity. But let's go back to our union days. We had to get productivity out of the union guys, and they got paid very, very well. Am I right? I mean, that was the rule of the game. That was the way it was played back then. And so he says, look, Mark, I can't remember what the percentage is, but I know that, let's say it's 30%. 30% of my revenue goes to our drivers' wages and compensation. Maybe it's 25%, whatever the number was. And he says, whatever that is, that's what I can afford to pay as long as my guys still get 2,800 miles a week out of the guys. And so we did that handshake thing that says, yes, I'm not going to back out of this thing. And we went to the market with a very unusual value proposition, $1,200 a week guaranteed salary, and home every weekend guaranteed. And even with that, we're still having a challenge finding more drivers to come on board. And those are some pretty good bennies, right? I went to the other company where they hired us to keep and retain drivers, and I suggested that they try that, and they were like, there's no way that our people are capable of managing that and getting any kind of productivity out of it. So if you can't give them a salary, fine. If you even can't even give them a bare minimum of, I won't let you go below, say, $700 a week because we screwed up or whatever, fine. You got to have something. You got to have, I've got automatics, I've got Volvos, I've got, you got to have something to be different. There's an old movie called Moscow on the Hudson, and it's featuring Robin Williams, who's defected from the Russians, and he's in an American grocery store. And because he's a Russian, he's never seen so much plenty before. He's always just seen bare shelves. He gets into the aisle with the coffee. As far as he can see, there's like chock full of nuts and Sands and all these different coffees, and he finally swoons and faints from all the choices because he's never seen so many choices. That scene reminds me of what truck drivers go through when they get to a truck stop and there's this rack by Randall Riley. And the rack by Randall Riley is ads from about 200 trucking companies. And we have gathered them all, we've collected them all because we're in the recruiting business, and you can lay them out on the table. And to an ad, they say, home often, new equipment, treated with respect, best pay, best benefits in the business, right down the line. And we call those things platitudes. Platitudes are empty promises that anybody can make that can't be substantiated and don't even have to be substantiated. Best benefits in the industry, take me on. Best pay, treated with respect, take me on. You going to prove me wrong? No, it's an ad, right? And so they can put anything they want. Even if it's a lie, they can put it in there, and they do. All those ads are the same, and so they're like Robin Williams being overwhelmed by all the coffee. Every single ad reads the same, so what's the poor truck driver to do? Well, they all say the same thing. I like blue trucks. I think I'll go with Werner. I like white trucks. I think I'll go with Swift. That's the only choice they got because everything else looks the same. Or they may, on occasion, talk to a driver at a rest stop. All right, and they may, just maybe, if you've got a nice, educated driving population with a good bonus plan in place for referrals, may get the straight skinny from somebody if they're a good fit. Who knows? Selection and hiring is fundamentally different than recruiting. Now you've attracted more people to your front door because you've written ads that are based upon your senior drivers' opinions and what they like and dislike and their values. Now, selection is the exact opposite. This is not a selection system. And yet this is real. This is a real picture. This is how some people hire, is if you got a CDLA, baby, we're hiring right now. It's like, reminds me of the Little Rascals with one of the letters backwards or something. Okay, you need a system that helps you not only recruit drivers who are like your senior drivers, but hire drivers who are like your senior drivers. You want to hire people who have the same skills, the same likes, and the value the same things that your senior people do. All right, they should like the same things, value them, but you also want reliable, safe, and you want them to serve your customers. I'm going to talk long and hard tomorrow about selection systems and processes that are very, very effective at identifying people who are a good fit for your business as well as risk averse and conscientious. So I'm only giving you 2 slides on that. I'm only going to give you 2 or 3 slides on orientation. Does your orientation, however, look like this? And you're laughing. But this is real, and we've seen it, and we've seen it all over the country. I was in Alabama with a very nice lady, director of safety for a company that has a couple hundred drivers, and I said, tell me all about your orientation. I do every orientation. I do them myself. Okay, tell me all about it. They sit right there, and I read them this book. I said, oh boy, that sounds like a great way to start a date. So I'm thinking orientation should be showing the love. It should be the big wet kiss. When you and I start to date or meet and we're going to go through a dating period and dance and get engaged, I don't whip out the rule book on you. If I whipped out the rule book, you'd think, oh my God, this is fatal attraction. This guy's crazy. I'm getting out of here right now. No, instead, it should be a time to embrace and show them the love. They have just made a decision. They have just left a trucking company because they didn't get the respect, the pay, the competence, a voice at the table that I said caused them to leave, and they came to you. And on day one, if this is what you do to them, this is what the other company did to them. Within the first 2 hours, they're going, uh-oh, deja vu all over again. This is exactly the same thing I just went through. Orientation needs to be fundamentally different. If it is different, I can guarantee you your retention rates will go up. Why? Because everybody does that. If you do anything different than that, I mean, we're walking along with you, I should names. We're walking along with the president, owner of a company, and he walked by the drivers and there's 4 people falling asleep in there watching a bad VHS tape of something about brakes or a pitman arm or something like that. It looks like it was in the 1970s. And he goes like this, he goes, I can't watch. He goes, I can't even look in there. I go, it's your company. He goes, I can't look at it. I go, well, fix it. Am I right? He had to hold his hand like this. He says, I can't even look. I said, fix it. You can fix it. You own the company. He goes, what am I going to do? I go, well, don't do that. So orientation should be all about the big wet kiss. It should be show the love. Instead of a sheep dip, you show your appreciation by thanking them. Literally thanking them, looking them in the eye and shaking their hand. Thank you for joining our company. We need every driver we can get, but we want really good drivers. And I heard through the grapevine and from my recruiter that you're a really great driver and you're going to be a good driver for us. I want to make sure that you stay here long term and we have a job for you years to come. You want to reward their decision and make them feel good, like, I finally came to a company that said thank you. You want to explain your expectations. And by that I mean, we don't have lots of rules here. We're not going to beat you up on all these different policies, but our expectation is that you're going to be a defensive driver, you're going to be safe, you're going to provide good care to our customers, you're going to be respectful to others around you, including dispatch and your supervisor. And in return, this is what you can expect from me. We'll pay you fairly, responsibly, we won't jack you around, we won't leave you on the weekend out in the middle of Timbuktu. You want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. The big company I'm working with, the 7,000 drivers, one of the things we first did relative to retention was we created a document. It's not a contract, but it basically says, here's what you've signed up for. Here's what we told you in the ad. Here's what we told you in recruiting. Here's what we're going to pay you. Here's when you can get paid. Here's your rate of pay. Here's what we expect from you in return. Both the guy that does the orientations, who in their case a safety guy, the safety guy and the driver sign it and they both get a copy. The other thing he gets, however, is a ticket. And the ticket is a free pass to go to the manager and bitch and complain if anything on that piece of paper is out of whack at some point in the future. And you should have seen the look on the president's face when I said, we're going to give him this ticket. He goes, oh, no, we're not. I go, oh, yes, we are. I says, either you keep your promises or you don't. And so it's a simple little red ticket that says, I got a complaint, and you can walk in with it. It's a free pass to sit down. The manager's got to stop what he's doing, wherever he's at, and sit down and listen to your complaint and try and resolve the thing. And you say, this is what you told me you're going to do, and this is what happened. And guess what? It's actually working. It's actually working. We don't have an inordinate number of complaints. We don't have a lot of people bitching and complaining unless there's a legitimate reason. And remarkably, some of the managers are actually taking action. This is a company that's got 150 terminals. But some of the managers are actually taking action on some of these complaints and fixing the thing and nipping it in the bud. And by doing so, it builds trust and it builds a sense of respect and appreciation that didn't exist before. Orientation is a process. Most people, when I ask them, do you have an orientation program? Oh, yeah, it's 2 days long. Oh, yeah, it's 3 days long. Orientation doesn't happen in 2 days or in 3 days. You didn't get to know your wife in 2 days. You didn't get to know your church in 2 days. You didn't get to know the Boy Scouts in 2 days. It's a process and it takes time. That's not to say that the person can't be rolling wheels and being productive, but don't think that after they've sat in the sheep dip for a day and a half of reading the policies and signing up for their benefits that they're all oriented, here's the keys to the truck, and never talk to them again. No, it's a process that goes on, and ideally it has a mentor, another driver who's been with you for several years, who can answer their questions. The mentorship process is one in which we give those senior drivers 20 or 30 questions likely to be asked and the 20 or 30 answers that should be given. And you know the questions and you know the answers. All you have to do is write them down and give them to your senior guys and say, hey, I'll give you an extra $100 to mentor Bob over here today. All right? And then if they do complain, you have to take action. Let me tell you another quick story. Guy's got 240, 250 drivers. He's an introvert. You know what an introvert is? People when they're in a group like this, the group just sucks energy out of them. They don't want to be in a good group. He hates to get in front of people and talk like I'm doing with right now. I said, here's what I need you to do. After the driver's been with you for 1 week, in exactly 1 week, I want you to call his or her cell phone and ask, how are we doing? Are we keeping our promises? How's your truck? How's dispatch? How'd that first week go? You know what he said to me? Oh, Mark, there's no way. He goes, can you imagine all the bitching and complaining? I go, are you serious? After 7 days, how bad can it be? I says, now's the time to call. It's still the honeymoon. I says, by you calling them, you're the president of this company, and showing them a little bit of care and consideration, and just asking ask the blunt question, how are we doing? We keeping our promises? How's the truck? How's that first week go? Did you make what the miles I said I was going to give you? Right? And if they don't, and if they are unhappy, you better nip it in the bud now, because that's the guy that's going to leave you in 4 or 5 months. And you would have thought I was asking for his firstborn child. He pushed back so hard. I go, you got to do this. I'm sorry. It just comes to the territory. You want to own a company, be successful? This is what you do. You pick up the phone and you call, and you say, how you doing? Okay? Education and training. Education, I said before, is sticking it to the gray matter. There's lots of stuff drivers need to know. They know most of it before they met you, didn't they? Don't you hire people who are senior, they've already been experienced drivers? But do they? Do they really know defensive driving? Do they know why have people have accidents? Do they know some of the stuff that I taught to you this morning? Do they know the 5 keys? Aim high in steering, get the big picture, leave yourself an out, keep your eyes moving. Everybody know the 5 keys? Everybody know Smith system here? I got something better for you. Okay, talk to you about that later. But do they know those things? Do they have those things top of mind? Do they apply those things? Do they have the right skills? How many people here have either said or heard the words, gee whiz, he was a good driver. I hated to lose him. He screwed up. If you say these words, it's time to stand up and go to the bathroom and look in the mirror, because you're the person that caused that. If a person has made a mistake, gotten in trouble with the federales, had an accident, there's only 1 or 2 reasons. 1, we hired somebody we shouldn't have hired. or we didn't train and educate them appropriately. Sorry, that's just what comes with the territory when you own the business. Either you didn't hire the right person or you didn't provide the education and training. This is not an acceptable statement to make. He was a great driver, I hated to get rid of him. No, it's on us to hire the right people who are safe and courteous. Yes, we're going to make mistakes, of course we are, but it's mostly on us to hire the right people and to make sure they get the education and training that they need. When we're thinking of education and training, I strongly encourage you to get your frontline people through some kind of charm school. I don't care if it's Dale Carnegie, I don't care if it's PDI or PI or there's a host of others. Basic leadership skills. Most of your fleet managers or dispatchers, well, let me ask it in a question. How many here have a fleet manager or dispatcher who was previously a driver? On one hand, that's great. I've got empathy, I got understanding, I've been in your shoes, I know what that job is all about. On the other hand, how much formalized learning have they received on basic leadership skills? Communication, conflict resolution, building trust, 0.0, generating a fair work environment, right? Basic leadership techniques, active listening. These are all basic skills that are necessary to be a good leader and are an opportunity for you to strengthen their skill set so that they can build a stronger bond with your drivers. Finally, retention. You want those positives to outweigh those negatives. Every day should be like the first day. Now we know it's not. We've all been here. We've all had that first date. We've all had that first week. And you get the flutters in your heart and you're all excited and happy. And it does wane, but you don't want it to get this bad. All right? You don't want it to go from one extreme to the other. Right? And so we want to try and make every day as nice and as close as we can to the first day. You don't want to talk at them. You want to talk with them. Eye to eye, face to face, sitting down together. It was interesting, we shot a video just 2 weeks ago on conflict resolution, and one of the scenes, the driver is, how many people here have a dispatch window, first of all, where the driver walks up to the window and gets papers or something like that? Great, you guys are way ahead of the curve. In my day, we all had dispatch windows, right? Hell, I don't want those Teamsters anywhere near me. And so you'd shove the bills out through the dispatch window, you know, like you were at a drive-in or something. And so we depict this scene where the manager's trying to diffuse a situation, and one of the people in Wisconsin came back and said, you know, we ripped all the dispatch windows out a couple of years ago to try and create more cohesion and more bonding between us and them. And so there isn't this wall between us. And so now what we're doing is if it starts at the window, because they still have windows in their company in some cases, if it starts at the window, the dispatcher says, well, come on in, let's sit down and talk. And instead of sitting down across from a desk, the manager actually sits knee to knee, 2 chairs facing each other, so that there's no barriers between us as we're having this conversation to reduce this conflict or to solve this problem. And so you don't want to talk at them, you want to talk with them. You want to listen. You want to really listen. And do you know listening is like one of the hardest things in the world to do? It really is, because you can understand the words coming out of my mouth about 10 times faster than I can say them. Now, right now I'm giving a presentation, so you're just sitting there bored and listening to me. But if we're in a conversation, and in fact tonight, check yourselves. We're going to have beer?
I think so.
Okay, good. If we're having a beer, and you're talking at the bar, you're having dinner with somebody, and you're talking, and they're going blah, 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 your brain has already figured out what you're going to say next while they're still doing the blah, blah, blah. You're already thinking about what you're going to say next. Covey refers to it as listen for understanding rather than listening for response. But all too often we listen for response. Okay, I've heard enough about this crap that he's talking about. Now I'm going to tell him my story, right? It's what we do. But when we're listening to a driver, we need to listen to understand, which means we can't think about what we're going to respond to. We have to just sit silently and listen and understand what their pain is. And then when they're all done, take one deep breath and respond back. Okay, so I think I understand that payroll jacked you around. You didn't get paid for your load from last Friday. I need to investigate that right now. If I get back to you by tomorrow, will that be soon enough? Listening to understand requires you take a deep breath before you respond, and then you parrot back to them what you just heard. Conduct satisfaction. How many people here do satisfaction surveys once a year or more? There's one. Anybody else? Tremendous opportunity, but only if. And only if you're willing to act on something you found out about. Because if you do a survey, it's implied that you're going to take some kind of action. I don't care if the action is, okay, you told me we suck and we're not going to do anything about it. At least that's an action. But you can't not do anything. You have to do something if you do a survey. But surveys are a wonderful opportunity. And SurveyMonkey's like either free or $10 or something. You can, and people can, they all have a smartphone. They can do it on their phone right now. You can do surveys so cheaply, so easily, and get great rich data on why they're there or why they're unhappy. Finally, ask the tough questions. Like my buddy that wouldn't ask the question, here they are. Are you having a good day? That's pretty basic, isn't it? Are you having a good day? Are you happy working here? How can I make your life better? We have a thing at Avatar called Stop, Start, and Continue. What should I stop doing? Well, stop telling me to piss off. What should I start doing? Well, start treating me with more respect. What should I keep doing? Keep giving me those juicy loads that I keep getting over here that I make a lot of money on. Start, stop, and continue is a great way to break the ice and to get the conversation going between a dispatcher, a fleet manager, and a driver. Finally, I believe that they're your key. Yes, you're the owner. Yes, you're the manager. How often does the driver come and talk to you? Once in a while, maybe. The dispatcher or the fleet manager talks to them every day. Make sure that they're assigned one-on-one. No one should have to have more than one boss. No one wants to have two bosses. Number two, sit in dispatch. Literally force yourself to go out there and sit. Don't do this silly, listening in like they do on call centers and things like. Just sit. Just listen. Listen to the way that people are talking to one another, and you'll find out soon enough if people are bold. I mean, if they're faking you out. Somebody will later say, that's not really the way Bob talks to him when you're not in the room over there. You'll find that out. Sit in dispatch and listen to it. Those are opportunities, those are learning moments to talk to your managers and your dispatchers about how they might listen a little bit better. Make sure your dispatchers have those skills that I talked about: communication, empathy, and leadership. And finally, and this is a biggie, I believe strongly that no less than 10 to 15% of a dispatcher's pay should be tied directly to the retention of his or her drivers. And you're going to say, oh, Mark, I can't do that. I'll lose my dispatchers. No, you won't. What you'll do is you'll keep your drivers. If you tie some of their pay to the retention of their drivers, they'll care more about not losing drivers. Now, you can do it in a couple of ways. You can say, well, I was paying them $10 an hour, now I'm going to pay them $9 an hour and $1 bonus for retention. Or you can say, I was paying them $10 an hour and I'm going to pay them $1 more for retention. Either way, tie a little piece of their compensation to the retention. And then put a big board up in your dispatch room. And every time a driver quits, the dispatcher that lost the driver has got to write the guy's name and why he quit. He's got to turn around to the other guys and say, I lost this guy today. I really didn't think he was going to quit on me, but he says that his wife is sick and he's got to move to Tulsa, Oklahoma. There's some baloney story usually, right? Are you upset when you lose a driver? You're not?
Depends on why I lose them.
They're precious. Trust me. They're precious. They're a precious commodity, and we need drivers. You don't want bad drivers, but you don't want to lose good drivers. If you lose a good driver, you're upset. Your dispatcher should be equally upset. How do we get that passion and fire in their belly? We tie a chunk of their money to that retention number, okay? Any questions? I'm sorry, I've got one more slide I want to go over before I go questions. I said that these symptoms were why drivers leave. And I said that these are 5 solutions that could combine to help you reduce those symptoms. The first is money. If you do a better job of portraying the real job, the nature of the job, and the pay of the job in your recruiting and in your selecting and your orientation, the money problem gets a little bit better. Home time. If you do a good job in your recruiting, selection, and orientation, home time gets better because you get better alignment. This is all about alignment. This is about shared expectations and perceptions becoming reality. We want them on the same page as we are. Just like that form that I told you about we used at the one company. We want to get on the same page. And you said it, I think. We want to be on the same page when it comes to safety. Well, we want to be on the same page when it comes to the nature of this job. Each one of these, the way I'm dispatched, 4 and 5, if you teach your dispatchers how to be more competent, if you teach your salespeople how to sell in the right routes, you'll get people who are dispatched in a better way. Every single one of these applies to those symptoms right here. If you do those things, it's not a one-to-one. If you do those things better, just a little bit better, some of these symptoms go away. You don't make all the symptoms go away, and you'll still lose drivers. As I said at the beginning, this is really heavy lifting. We're neck deep into it, and it's really, really hard. We're making a little bit of progress and we're working our tail off on it, but you have to give it that level of attention and that level of energy. It's hard work and it needs processes. We have some of those processes. We have some of those documents for you, including this on the website. We have some surveys for you and we have some educational tools for you. We're here to help. Just give us the call and let us help, okay? There are 3 kinds of drivers. The ones who work for you, the ones who don't work for you, and the ones who used to work for you. In every case, they are a prospect. While we were sitting here, someone was talking to one of your drivers. A recruiter was asking them to come to work for another company. While we were sitting here, you have to constantly recruit your own drivers by telling them how you're treating them, by showing them the love and appreciation, and by trying to woo them just like it's the first day all over again. They're your prospects, just like your existing drivers are, your past drivers are, and the drivers that you haven't even met are. It's all the same. Recruiting and retention is the same game. You can't ever stop trying to recruit and convince them that you've got the best job. What can I answer for you? Am I on time? Am I late?
We're close.
Close, okay.
A little over.
Oh man, that's because I was a little under before. Tomorrow we're going to talk about selection, which is fundamentally different than recruiting. And we're going to talk about building a driver culture, which we'll talk about some of those same questions again at a much higher level, I think, a much deeper level. All right, we're here to help. Let us know how we can help. I know you all want more drivers. Hell, we want more drivers. But process can help. It can't solve all the problems, it can help some. And I know that that's not why you joined the captive. You joined the captive for other reasons: safety, risk mitigation, risk transfer, lower costs. But we know that this is what keeps you up at night. And so this is where we're focused on most of our energies, okay? Thanks so much. Appreciate it.